Welcome to Fun and Fundraising, everybody. The podcast where we talk with people behind top nonprofit galas and signature fundraising events to showcase how they positively transform their communities. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, and today I'm really excited to have my friend Rachel Parr on as a guest. Rachel is probably one of the hardest working nonprofit professionals I know, really anywhere in Texas and anywhere really. And she is the Director of Development and Marketing for a wonderful school called the Rise School of Boston. They have an annual upcoming signature fundraising event called Shine for Rise. And it's really one of the most unique, one of the most really inspiring organizations that I've really ever come across in all my years in philanthropy and chronicling nonprofits. So with that, Rachel, welcome. And I'm so excited to have you on as a guest today.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here, and thank you for your introduction. That's so kind, and I'm just so excited. I'm happy to be here today.
Absolutely. So talk a little bit about the mission of the Rise School, kind of what it is, how it was, how it was created and all that.
Sure. So our mission is to provide the highest quality early childhood education to children of all abilities, in an inclusive setting where every child receives the support they need and the individualized education they need to reach their maximum potential. And so basically what that means is our mission is centered around inclusion. And we focus on celebrating every child, helping every child get the support that they need. And just making sure and recognizing that we're all better when we come together. So for us, inclusion means that 50% of our students have a delay or disability, and 50% are typically developing, but they're all learning together. But more importantly, we're crafting the education to them, to every child, and to what they need. We're not trying to do a one size fits all approach to education. We really just want to look at how do you support every child and celebrate them and make sure that they feel loved and included and a valued member of society, because that's so important. And so we've basically just really worked on making sure that we're looking at every child when they come to us and looking at where they are developmentally. What are they working on? How can we help them in whatever their goals are? And then just being that team for them, being those experts, being their advocates, and just really setting them up for success as best we can so that they have a really strong and bright future.
You know, that is one of the things I have loved about most about the Rise School is the inclusion. So, what I kind of have always wanted to know, and I've never really asked anybody involved with it, but talk about, you had talked about kind of the customized learning that you do for each of the students, but talk about how developmentally delayed and non-developmentally delayed children interact, and they probably all learn a lot from one another. Talk a little bit about that and things that
Yes.
you've seen over the years with that.
So it's honestly incredible. It's amazing to see it because so first and foremost, I'll say that something that we kind of had to help everyone see is every child benefits from our model, right? Because we have experts in every domain of early childhood development. That means we've got speech therapists, physical therapists, occupational therapists, music therapists. We have master's level educators that are all coming together and looking at every child that comes through our doors, right? So that means you have an expert in every field that's helping your child. And so everyone benefits from it. But the really incredible piece to it is watching how they all interact together. So above what we're teaching just from the skills and the development piece, we're teaching these little kids how to be compassionate humans. We're teaching them that everyone should be loved and celebrated. We're teaching them to look past differences and to instead view differences as an incredible positive and what makes our world so special. And it's so amazing because you see as these kids leave, they take it to their next environment where, I mean, we hear back from our alumni years down the road, and we hear stories of like, our student went to the Rise School and they were in the lunchroom today and they saw a child at their school now in high school that had a delay or disability, and they were sitting alone. So they invited them to come sit at their table. And you just see them carry this piece through of everyone is valued, everyone is important, everyone adds value. And it's really amazing to see. And so that's something that really comes together. And it's also just sweet to see they become helpers. They learn that everyone has strengths, everyone has weaknesses. That's totally normal and totally okay. and they learn how to help their friends out when and where and how they need it. So it's just amazing that you're seeing both the incredible educational side, when those developmental milestones that our kids are reaching, but you also just see this empathetic, compassionate, loving side that's also coming from our students in this environment.
That really is so well said. And we'll talk a little bit more about alumni in a little bit, but it's always nice to see alumni, coming back a little bit later on. Just for anyone who may not be, aware on, the terminology, talk a little bit about developmentally delayed and kind of the current definition of that.
Oh, that's a hard question. So the language has changed a lot, but really there isn't an exact right or wrong in the language, but basically our kiddos, they have a variety of delays or disabilities that could be Down syndrome, autism, cerebral palsy. It could be small delays here and there across, speech delays or what have you. And it's always just important to focus on the person. So often what we'll say is person first language, but really in the end of the day, it's whatever that person feels most comfortable and how they want to talk about themselves, talk about perhaps their disability or delay. So the language has changed a lot, but it's really just focusing on the person and putting that person first, and valuing them. And so, but our community, it really runs. We have people of all different abilities and backgrounds coming to us. And so it really creates this amazing community that supports each other. And it's pretty wonderful.
That's amazing. And what a great answer. I love that, it's the child first, and really first and foremost, that's really ultimately what it's about at the end of the day. And,
Mhm.
I know you've been involved with this organization for several years. So talk about how you initially got involved and wound up at the Rise School.
Sure. So I actually got involved through our fall gala. Our very, very first fall gala was in 2014. And at the time, I was an event planner working more on contract. And so I had become connected with another event planner that knew one of Rise's board members. And Rise had been planning its very first fall gala. And so they were looking for outside event planning support as they figured out this first year and all the logistics. And so this other event planner and I got involved. And it was that very first gala that I learned about the mission and started getting to know the people at the Rise School and loved it. I mean, how can you not when you see, I still remember the first video and seeing it at one of the events, but they had showed two kids from the school and just what their journeys had looked like. And it really resonated. And so the second year came around, I had worked with them again, still on contract. And at the time, I'd also been working with another company. And I just started feeling like, I don't think this is my calling. I think I want to be working somewhere that's going to have more impact. I want to have an impact on the community. And I keep working with this organization and it's been so positive. And that's what I feel like my calling is something where I can give back to the community and have a little bit more of that meaning behind the work that I was doing. And I had reached out to Emily Greer. She'd been the executive director at the time. And I thought, Emily knows everyone. So if anyone can help me out with this, I think it's going to be Emily. And I had also heard that they'd had a position opening at the Rise School. And I thought, well, we'll see. I've loved working with them. I've loved their mission, but I'll connect with Emily and see what she says and, kind of go from there. Well, the position that had opened up was an event manager position. And so I went to lunch with Emily, and by the end of the lunch, she had offered the position. I had accepted, and we were just really excited to start this new chapter. And it just felt like everything clicked into place. It was like a blessing of here I am. And all of these pieces just led to this moment that I hadn't seen coming when I had done the first event 2 years prior. But what a perfect path. It just kind of felt like, you have those moments of like, this is what I was meant to do. And that moment, it just felt like this is what I was being led to, and this is the right moment. And so I joined the team. That was 2016. And I've been here ever since and just kind of worked my way through through Rise. And so it's been incredible. And every year that I'm here, I think I can't possibly love this mission more. But every year with the new students that come through and you hear the new stories and you meet the new parents, and it's like every year I fall in love with it all over again because it's so impactful. I mean, it's been so incredible just to see the impact of Rise on our students and families. And so every year I'm just blown away all over again.
I'm glad you shared that answer. And I do have one follow-up question. So, a lot of times people will shift roles in nonprofits. What,
Mhm.
what is kind of the undercurrent that makes you fall continually be in love with this organization that you stay, because 8 years is a pretty long time in the nonprofit space to stay with one organization. What is that undercurrent that allows you to really just continue to maintain that love and passion for this organization?
It's the children, the amazing children. I mean, every day that you walk through the halls here, you just see it, you see the weight of the impact and how much it has changed these kids. And I mean, you can see it on their faces, but also on their parents' faces. And I think a big thing that we talk about a lot is it's the hope that a lot of these parents that come through Rise, they're given maybe I don't know if bleak is the right word, but they're kind of given some of this language at the very beginning of like, oh, these are all of the things, the hardships that you and your child are going to face moving forward. And we don't do that. We focus on all of the good things and all of the positives and what their children will be able to do and what we're going to focus on next and how we're going to help them. And it just gives this spark to these parents of hope that they're finding a place that's accepting and loving their child, that's going to push them to keep growing and learning and achieving to the best of their abilities, that believes in their kids and loves their kids. And it's hard not to just love not only what we're doing for the kids, but that hope that we're able to give the community and the parents. It's hard to explain it unless you see it. But every time I see it, it just reaffirms why this mission is so important.
Well, and the mission is really important. And one of the ways, and I did it, it's great when I get to talk with somebody, because it's very rare, that has been involved with the signature fundraising event really from day one. And really, even though you weren't officially with the organization, you were on contract at the time. Talk about how this, over the last decade, how this fall signature fundraising event has evolved.
Yeah, so we actually started as a wine auction. And I hadn't been super familiar with the crowd at the time, but I guess there was a really big interest in wine. And so it started out, there had been like 30 wine packages, and it was a um pretty neat event, and how it started, and that it was, you could come and get these exclusive wine experiences or these hard to come by wines. Um, and so it made it pretty unique. But as we grew and we started attracting more donors, more attendees, more community members, we got away a little bit from the wine, because at a certain point then we wanted to grow with our crowd and make sure that we could appeal to a larger audience. But we've always kept that nod. Every year we still try to pull together some type of exclusive fun experience having to do with wine or Napa, or you know wineries in Europe or something. And we also always try to still curate a couple of really unique, interesting wine packages of, here are these bottles of wines that are going to be really hard to get anywhere else, kind of the boutique wineries. And so we've always kept that nod, even though we've grown away from it being strictly a wine event. But that was why the event had originally been called Travel the Vine. And it was because there were all these wine packages, and a lot of them from kind of around the world. And so it was just this play on words of, um, basically nodding to that love of wine. And so that had been how it started. And then it just kept growing. And so now it falls a little bit more like, I guess, a standard live or silent auction, in that there's more array, I guess you could say, a bigger selection of items. But yes, we still have kept that nod. We just realized we needed to change a little bit to match the changing crowd.
So, that actually is the perfect segue into my next question. So, I want you to put your marketing director hat on for a moment. So, talk about what, motivated the team to officially rebrand, and then how how your team came up with the name of the event, which is now known as Shine for Rise.
Yeah, so as we kept getting away from the wine piece of it, we realized the name didn't really make a lot of sense. And honestly, no one ever got the name right. And so people would call it, Wine for Rise or Travel for it was just people would kind of butcher the name because it didn't really make sense. And especially if you hadn't been there right at the very beginning where you understood that Travel the Vine was because we had wines from all over the world. And so it just got to a point where people would be like, travel the rise. And it's so no one really understood it anymore. And we thought, well, we've got to get away from that then. And so we waited a little bit because we wanted to make sure that when, you have to be careful from a marketing standpoint. If you're going to change a rebrand an event, you also don't want people to forget that it's the same event that they love. And so we had to do it really carefully, but we finally landed on it where we wanted the name to also be more reflective of our mission. And our logo, for anyone that's not familiar, our logo is a sun. And we always talk about how Rise's mission or Rise's goal is to help our kids have a bright future. And we kind of focus on that sunshine aspect of it. And so another thing we always say is we want our students to shine. And so we're helping them shine. We're giving them a bright future. And that's what our donors are doing, is helping these students have the best start in life and giving them that. And so the more we thought about it, the more it seemed like Shine for Rise made perfect sense, because our donors are shining for Rise. And in doing that, they're helping our students shine. And it's basically it's going back to that sunshine and the hope and the positivity and all of that imagery that goes with our mission and our school. And so we pulled the trigger on it, and it has been very well received. I think people really like that the name now is more reflective. And again, I think it just taps into that feeling of hope that I think is one that's really resonated in our community. And so, it gives us a lot of fun to talk about, like, a ray of sunshine or rise and shine. I mean, there's a lot of play on words you can do with it. So it's made naming sponsorships more fun and much easier to come up with things than it had been with Travel the Vine. And so we were really happy with how, it's always a little bit nerve-wracking from a marketing standpoint when you're about to pull that trigger of like, okay, hopefully everyone resonates. And I don't think we could have picked a better name. I think it just really, again, it also just speaks to our donor community, who we wouldn't be where we are without our donor community. So they give us hope, and in turn give our parents hope. So we love the rebrand, and I hope everyone else does too. I mean, it has been well received, but it's been fun having this name now and really being able to play into that.
Absolutely. And, to me, as someone who's been, involved with the event, and attended it, over the years, really from the beginning as well, it really does encapsulate what you all do so perfectly. And, towards the end of your response, you were talking about, just pulling the trigger and just, pressing go and saying, yes, we're going to do this.
Mhm.
For any, what is one piece of advice you would give to an organization that is looking to evolve or rebrand, whatever you want to call it, their gala or signature fundraising event?
I think you have to kind of be prepared to take steps, right? So the very first year we did it, all of our language that went out was basically Shine for Rise, formerly Travel the Vine. You can't just immediately drop the previous name, or else people aren't going to resonate that it's the same. You can try and maybe they will, but then it just gets even more confusing. And so we did that the whole first year. Never, I don't think, did we ever once send out something that said just Shine for Rise. It was always, Shine for Rise, formerly Travel the Vine, or some language along those lines. And so we reached out to our donors too and said, this is our fall fundraiser. We're so excited to do a rebrand. We announced it. So they also knew, and we could tell them why we were renaming it. And so I think you just kind of have to have that layer of communication and explanation. so that people event, because I guess from a psychological standpoint, right, you're used to seeing Travel the Vine, and now you still see it, but now you start also associating it with Shine for Rise, and then eventually you drop the Travel the Vine, and it kind of just smoothly keeps that mental connection in everyone's brain. And so that was really how we kind of transitioned that first year. And we'd already also kind of armed our board and our event committee with, okay, we're renaming it so that you all can share with your communities. This is the same event. It's still going to have all of the fun and the fundraising, but it's going to have a different name. It's going to have a different look and feel, and it's going to be more tied to our mission. And I think too, once people know that it's like the reason you're changing it is because of the mission, they get even more bought into it. Everything goes back to the mission, and that's what people want to be there for anyway. So, but that would be my recommendation, is just communication. Use your board, use your committee as your tool. Word of mouth is the best way always, to kind of get everyone on board. And so I think that really helped make it really smooth. And so by that next year, we were ready to call it Shine for Rise. No one had any questions. No one was confused, and it worked out perfectly.
That was a great answer. And now that you say that, I do remember that year and the communication with that. And it was very gradual. And it was like, it never felt jarring going. And I know that I've been to events where it has been rebranded, where it is jarring from one year to the next. And, the year before, the year of, and the year after that transition, there was a continuity. It still felt like the same event. You all did a really, really good job with that, and really one of the best
Yeah.
rebrands I think I've ever seen in all my years doing this. So, bravo to
Thank
you all on
you.
that.
Thank
And
you. It felt,
absolutely.
and we made sure, even I think the save the dates that year, I think we'd even put in the language, we'd put a little bit of note in there that was like, thank you for all you do for helping our kids shine. And we'd put shine in all caps. And so it was just, even in just the mission oriented language, it kind of pulled it in to help people, again, make that connection and make that association.
Absolutely. And this actually is a good segue into the next question I have. So, and you're one of the most uniquely qualified people probably to ask this. So, you're putting on your gala and your signature fundraising event. You as a marketing director and a development director, I mean, they are complementary hats, but they are also very different hats. So talk about how those two functions overlap in your planning process and how they're different when you're planning the event.
Sure. I'm a big believer that development and marketing has to go hand in hand, because if you ask me the one thing that's going to make fundraising the most successful, it's going to be storytelling, and it's going to be how you share your mission. And that has so much to do with marketing. And so it's that marketing piece that's going to make your development successful. So you can't really have one without the other, right? And so I think with this event too, it's, the marketing side of it is really just that, how we're sharing our mission, how are we speaking about our mission, how are we speaking about the event, and how are we tying the two together so that people also associate what the impact from this event is. And so I think marketing can really focus on that, where you're really helping people understand the mission, you're focusing on that messaging, but you're tying it back to development in terms of, how are you helping people see that their support makes a huge difference. And so it's like they're basically, I don't know, two sides of the same coin, I guess you could say, where the marketing is really just helping you reach the right people with the right message to show off what our mission is doing. And then the development, it just kind of closes that loop of reaching out to those specific people, and then being able to use all of this work that you've put into the messaging and the mission and the story, and then share that so that they can see, this is why we need your support. This is how we're going to use your support. And this is the long-term impact it's going to have. And I'm not sure if that answered your question or not,
It
but
absolutely did, because like the way you were describing it, it almost felt like I had in my mind like a vision of like when you see like a logo or a slogan and it's got like two arrows and there's like one arrow on top of the other arrow. Like to me it was like that, or even if you've got like a circular and there's two arrows, in a circle, it really I under you really made a good explanation of the continuity. And one of the things you were talking about was donor engagement. And let's talk a little bit about how does the Rise School keep alumni donors, and because your students graduate at age 5 or age 6. They graduate pretty young. So how do you keep them engaged with the organization once
Yeah.
they've become alumni?
I think it's really helpful that we have a strong community and that all of our parents, they end up forming these bonds or forming these relationships because they become support systems for each other. And we're in an interesting position because there aren't any other schools like ours in the Austin area. And so it means we pull from zip codes all over Austin and surrounding areas. And so we have sort of this far-reaching net that I think it continues to build on itself, because one of the offers, or one of the things that we offer to our families, is transition support services. So when our students are ready to leave Rise and transition into their public pre-K or kindergarten, our teachers, our program team, they're in those meetings. They're helping with those initial ARDs. They're helping with the students' individualized instruction plans that they're going to be working on with their new school. But then we're also pulling these parents, alumni parents that have been to some of these schools. They come back for this parent panel, so that our alumni parents are basically speaking to our current parents saying, this is what you can expect. This is what you can do. These are what resources are available. And just by some of these practices, we end up building these bonds because our current parents end up connecting with our alumni parents. And so we sort of have this circle where everything kind of comes full circle because they're all there to support one another. And so that's been one way that we keep our alumni still pretty close. We try to still stay in communication with them and hear how their kids are doing. We have some of our alumni students that will come and read stories to our current students, which is always so sweet. And then we've started a junior board. And so we try to get, and that's meant for high school students that can come and volunteer. So we just try to find ways to continue fostering those relationships with our alumni. And we still reach out to them. And so I think that's really helped all of those pieces kind of create this bond within our alumni network that keeps them engaged. And, there really aren't other schools like us. And we do a lot of work to help get our kids from where they are at Rise to be successful in their next education environment and support the parents through that journey. And so I think it really helps keep them close to us. I think they recognize how special we are even after they've left. And so they really just continue to stay involved and to support. And so it makes for a really sweet community and a lot of great connections that we're so grateful to have. But I think a lot of it is just how our mission fosters those relationships.
So speaking of, creating community and fostering relationships, I want to talk a little bit about your partnership with Mac, Jack, and McConaughey, because I remember last year I got a release right after the event about you're able to undergo expansion because of the funds as a beneficiary of them. And I think, to me, what's great about that is it shows the importance of nonprofits working and collaborating with other nonprofits. So like when you were talking about transition services with students, when they transition out, there's probably going to be some other nonprofits that may do different services than you that are involved. So talk about, one, your relationship with Mac, Jack, and McConaughey, what it's allowed you all to do from an expansion perspective, as well as just the importance of collaborating with other nonprofit organizations.
Absolutely. So, MJ and we're so lucky to be a beneficiary. They have 5, and we've been one of them, because of Sally and Mac Brown. So Sally and Mac Brown actually founded the Rise School of Austin. We would not be where we are today without them. They have been incredible advocates for our mission. And again, they're who got us up and running. They're who got us into the building we have now. And so with their support these last couple of years, Sally wanted us to dream big, and we have a long wait list, and we've had a long wait list for a while because there aren't other places like us. And so people find us. And so we end up with this wait list of having more kids than we can serve. And so our dream was to grow, and we are so blessed and grateful that MJ&M support has enabled us to do that. And so we are in the process right now of growing. We had been 84 students last year. This year we're 96, but we're growing up to 120 to 128, which is amazing. There's 7 or 8 other RISE programs, or total RISE programs in the nation, and will be the biggest, which is daunting and exciting and so wonderful because it means we can support more kiddos in our community. But it's also just, I think the thing that's so amazing about MJNM, to your point, is you're bringing together these nonprofits that are all serving a similar group, a similar audience. And I think that's so important. I mean, I've had this conversation recently with a few other people in the development world too, where yes, we all obviously need to fundraise. And so sometimes it can feel almost like you're in a competition, but we're not, we're all trying to serve the same kids that need different supports. And so we want all of our nonprofits to thrive. We want all of our fellow nonprofits to be able to do their part, because again, we're all helping the children in our community, the people in our community, have a better future, have a better life, have the services and support they need, have access. And so I think it is really important to have those conversations between nonprofits of, is there anything we can do to partner? How can we support one another? What are ways that, we can support your mission and vice versa? And sometimes that's even small things, like we will do like information sessions sometimes where we'll bring in outside sources to come in and talk to our parents and provide different resources. I mean, the transition can be one piece, but we've even had community members, not even necessarily nonprofits, come in and help with like, okay, well, how do you set up your finances and have a financial game plan for your kids as they get older? But you can look at all these pieces and all these services and supports and the knowledge that all of these different groups have, and find a way for everyone to work together and ultimately serve the same purpose or the same goal. And so I love, speaking of marketing, I think MJNM has done such a beautiful job with that in their tagline of empower kids, because again, it just shows, organization aside, there's one mission, there's one goal that everyone is serving ultimately in 2 words: empower kids. And what better way can you support your community? That's an investment in the future. And so I really think it's a beautiful model that they've put together. And I think it does foster those conversations in the community of, okay, yeah, we all have to fundraise, but let's put aside this thought of like a competition and instead look at how can we foster each other's work, support one another. And I think you see a lot of that in the nonprofit world, because again, we're all in it for the heart, we're in it for what we can do to make the world a better place. And so it's just really fun to see how they're approaching that space. Every year they blow me away. And I think again, it's just they're taking the heart and they're really able to take it down to the base level of why we're all here and why we're all doing what we do.
Now, speaking of fun, you kind of ended on that, and thank you for sharing kind of your collaboration with MJNM. And it really, you all, I think, are such a good example of how the money that they use is used in a really positive, innovative, and unique way, like all in one. And it's just really cool. And with that, let's talk a little bit about what guests can experience at this year's Shine for Eyes.
Yeah, so we're in the process of getting it all solidified. We are moving to a new venue, so we're going to be at Brazos Hall this year, which we're pretty excited about. It's, we've seen our crowd grow a little bit, and it's, hard sometimes in the Austin space to find the venues that are big enough, but not so big that then you're just, kind of dwarfed by it. And so we're really excited to be in Brazos Hall this year. And one thing that our crowd, we've learned through the years, is they really like the cocktail hour. So we used to do where, everyone comes, you do the silent auction and you sit for dinner, and then you do the live auction, and then you have a band. Well, we started to flip that around and treat it more, we want it to feel, instead of waiting and doing the music and the entertainment at the end, we want it to feel like you're walking into a party. And so we kind of reversed that order. We have the band at the beginning, we have wine tosses at the beginning. We try to sort of load our cocktail hour with entertainment so that when you get there, you can have fun, you can let loose, you can see your friends, you can, you know, catch up with people you haven't seen in a while and have a lot of fun. And then we sit down and switch more to the heartfelt program, and we end on that piece. So we're really ending on the mission, and putting the entertainment on the front end. And it's worked really well for us. We actually always get feedback that cocktail hour is not long enough. And so I think we're actually going to try to extend it this year. Because again, I think Rise has such an incredible community. Everyone really bands together to support our mission. And that just every time our community comes together, it's like they all just love catching up and seeing each other. And so it's just something that we knew it, but I don't know. We always thought still, well, like, oh, you can't keep cocktail hour too long, so people are going to get antsy. But no, instead we've gotten the opposite of like, no, make cocktail hour longer. It's never long enough. We don't get to see everyone and talk to everyone. And so we're working on that this year of how can we extend cocktail hour a little bit. I mean, I guess I probably shouldn't call it cocktail hour anymore, because it's going to be an hour, probably more than that. But it's been fun. I think reversing it for our crowd, it's worked. And we've tried to find venues where there is a little bit of that outdoor element, so that when you walk up, you already hear the music, you see the people. So you kind of get the feel of the event before you're ever even in the doors, before you're ever even through check-in. You're already seeing it, hearing it, getting excited about it. And so we've had a lot of fun kind of playing with that piece to it and just sort of reversing it. And it's worked really well for us. So we're excited to brainstorm again going into this year of how do we just further build on that and just keep it really fun, where we know that our guests go to a lot of events. And so we just want to make sure, as with everyone does, that we're keeping it fun, but still keeping it mission centered. And so this way we can really focus on the mission and the program, but really focus on the fun on the front.
Well, what I loved hearing about your program and kind of the ideas for that is with the extending the cocktail hour is that it in some ways goes back to the roots of what it was originally in Travel the Vine, which was a wine auction. So it really, pun intended, it's keeping with the spirit and the tradition of the event in doing that. So I thought that, I mean, it seems it always is a lot of fun, and I can't wait and I've been to Brazos Hall before. It's a fun, unique space. So I cannot wait to see what you all do with it. And I know we're coming up on time, but I do want to end with this one question. And that is, what is one thing all successful fundraising events have in common?
Storytelling. I think storytelling it's the most impactful way to reach your crowd. And I think it's going to be the thing that makes or breaks an event, is how well can you tell your mission's story? Because it's one thing to spout off a mission statement, right? Like, people will listen to it, they'll get it, and they might believe it. But when you hear the story of how that mission has impacted a child, has impacted a family, has impacted a member of society, it makes it more real. It makes it more, I don't know if relatable is the right word, because a lot of these stories are hard to relate to because we're not all in the same shoes, but it just adds that more personal connection to it, and I think that's what people want when you're giving to an organization. They want to know that they're giving to a good cause and making a difference. That's why we all do it, because we want to support our community. We want to support the kids, and you want to know that you're doing that. And so I think the more that you can tell those stories, that's how you get people to truly understand your mission past just the mission statement, truly feel it and understand the actual outcomes and the difference that you're making, and then feel like they can be a part of that. And that if they're there and they're supporting, that they're also giving that gift of hope or, an education to children. And so I think that's, if you're going to take away one thing, it's figure out how to tell your mission story, and figure out how to do it in a way that's everyone is going to feel so moved by it, but also just connected to it, make it more relatable, make it where they can understand what you're saying. Because sometimes mission statements, they have to be a little bit more surface level, right? Because you can't have a paragraph long mission statement, but you can have a longer story, and you can show how it becomes a reality. So I think that's been, something that for Rise has been really important to us is how do we make sure that our mission is included throughout the event? How do we tell those stories? We always like to do an impact video, but even just other ways, this past year we had celebrated our 20th school year. And so we brought in all of these old stories from the last 20 years and we're able to put them on display. And it was just fun to see how all of our guests related or connected to those stories, or even for a lot of them remembered, oh my gosh, 10 years ago, I remember that student or I remember that family. And I think it makes a big difference. So I think the one thing that all successful events or fundraisers are going to have is that storytelling piece.
That is the perfect way to end this segment. And I loved hearing the story of the Rise School over the 2 years and the story of this event. And to be able to, it's rare for me to be able to talk with someone who's been involved with it from day one. And I can see why it's still a success 11 years later. And again, Rachel, I cannot thank you enough for the time today. I really appreciate you coming on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I always love an opportunity to talk about Rise. So anytime.
Absolutely. And Shine for Rise, benefiting the Rise School Austin, will be held on October 24th, 2024 at Brazos Hall in Austin, Texas. For more information, please visit riseschoolaustin.org. And that will do it for this episode of Fun and Fundraising. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, reminding you to keep it fun, keep it interesting, and your guests will have a great time. Have a great day, everyone, and take care.